And welcome back, everyone. For those of you joining us expecting a typical RFL format, obviously we've suspended it this evening. And all day long, we've been bringing you viewers both on FiOS 1 and both Long Island, New Jersey, and those joining us in Potomac, as well as the RNN viewers, the unfolding situation taking place in Newtown, Connecticut. 28 people dead, and including in the 20 school children between the ages of kindergartners and up to fourth graders at the Sandy Hook Elementary School. Also, 6 other administrators, including teachers, were killed as well. There's also a person recovering at the Danbury Hospital, and we understand that that they should be able to recover from their wounds. It's not life-threatening. We are learning much more about both the shooter and also some of the guns that he used. We'll be talking about the guns in a second. But we have reporters, as you just saw, both in Hoboken as well as also up in Newtown, Connecticut. And Megan, this will spark a debate, and it has to do with guns. I'll show you in a second what Mayor Bloomberg had to say after the shooting. But they found 3 guns on the shooter. One was a Glock, another was another handgun as well, and the third a .223 caliber rifle. There were some reports, and that's the rifle in question. There were some reports that there might have even been a 4th gun, but nonetheless, this has sparked conversations. You heard what the president had to say. And a lot of other channels right now are dedicating to the conversation as to where the dialogue goes from here. This isn't the first time we've talked about this. We've talked about this after, obviously, Columbine. We talked about this after Virginia Tech, the Jonesboro shooting in Arkansas, the movie shooting at that Colorado theater in Aurora, thank you. And there's more, and there's more. And they're all different, but the one commonality that exists is a deranged person with a gun and tragedy and loss of life. Well, I don't want to use our time here to get into what will be a conversation, a national dialogue over guns. Officials have already weighed in that enough is enough. And I expect to see out of both Washington and out of different state houses. I saw Carolyn McCarthy, who is the congresswoman from Long Island, who lost her husband and her son severely injured by the gunman on the LARR many years ago, and she became a congresswoman not long thereafter. She was speaking out about this, that something has to be done, and people debate about what that something should be, but this will be a dialogue. And in fact, this the words from Congresswoman McCarthy after the shootings today. She said, leaders in Washington from both parties and groups like the NRA all say that now is not the time to talk about how gun safety laws can save lives in America. I agree. Now is not the time to talk about gun laws. The time for that conversation was long before all those kids in Connecticut died today. Do we have, everyone, the comment from Mayor Bloomberg? All right, we'll have that one shortly for you. But the point is that this conversation is going to happen, and people will talk about whether it's the guns or whether it's tracking the guns or the ammo, or if there needs to be certain restrictions on the types of guns or the quantity of guns or the waiting periods attached to the guns. But I believe that there'll be a dialogue coming out of this, and hopefully there can be some kind of arrangement where people who believe not only in the right to bear arms, but believe in them as an important component for protection or whatever they do, and those who want to curb certain kind of weapons like assault weapons, that there can be some common ground in Washington. Because every poll you see, there seems to be Americans seem to have more consensus on this than the 2 different groups would lead us to believe.
Right.
There seems to be maybe a will out there, certainly from the public, to change the way things are done. And we'll see if the will is there in Washington.
I think she's right, though, that the conversation is not today. I think that we are still dealing with families that are, and it is definitely going to be a conversation, but I think that everyone right now is just concentrating on these families, these, 20-odd families that are forever changed because someone got their hand on a gun, that these families, but their lives are over. These children are not, as the president said, going to graduate. These children are not going to have children of their own. And so I think that it is just such a flood of emotions. Who's at fault? Why are they at fault? How did he get his hand on the gun? There's a lot of questions there. And as this investigation kind of unfolds, I think we're going to be learning more information about this individual, of course, this alleged shooter, 20-year-old Adam Lanza, his motives, and how he got his hands on the gun. And I think that that will shed some light into the conversation about guns.
Giovanna Durpick from FiOS is up in Newtown along with several other reporters, and she joins us now. Giovanna, with the latest from what is a very broken community, and we understand, Giovanna, there's going to be a vigil in about 20 minutes or so for a lot of the Newtown residents. Tell us what's going on behind you.
Sure. Well, we have the firehouse right here behind me. We had the state police walking the area, and earlier in the evening we saw a lot of people inside there. Now, so many people have so many stories and will be personally impacted for a long time to come. I was speaking with one woman who lives on a street. This is so ironic. She lives on Sunnyview Terrace. This morning, she said that she came out to get the newspaper. She came out and suddenly she heard some screaming. It sounded like kids screaming. She tried to see what was going on here, and then suddenly she saw two young children. One was skating away as fast as he could. The other one is screaming, "Bloody murder." Again, those are her words, not mine. Bloody murder. Imagine a young child screaming that out. The other one was trying to chase after him, saying, "Stop, stop." And this child was saying, "No, no, no, they're hurt." That's how this woman described it. I asked her how old these children were, and she said, "I don't know, but they were very, very young." They were running out here trying to escape. And then suddenly she said she saw police pulling up the driveway up Dickinson Drive. She heard 10 to 12 shots being fired. And she described that to me as boom, 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 boom. The shots didn't stop. And of course, she didn't know where the bullets were flying, what was going on. She was concerned for the children. Now, those children are okay, but when I spoke to that woman, she just said she just can't even imagine how they're traumatized. And to help these people who've been traumatized, we understand that a lot of members of the clergy have been out here. You can listen to the Monsignor here who addressed some of the families in this community. Here's what he had to say.
It was really hard to put into words. It was sobbing, there was yelling, there was people throwing themselves on the floor in absolute upsetment. There are very few words you say like this. A lot of it was just holding them and hugging them and just praying with them. Many of them of my parish asked me just to pray with them and to pray for their families to get through this. It's surreal, it just doesn't seem real. Like one of the ladies, her phone just went off because it was time to take her little boy to a Cub Scout meeting, and she realized, I can't take him now, So those kind of moments are really, really hard on these parents. I think it's still in their minds that this is not real. And I think at 3 o'clock when they actually gave the death toll, it really hit home to most of them. But I think prior to that, there was some information that there may be some in hospitals and they just couldn't locate them. But this became pretty clear this afternoon.
What was it like for you to see that?
Oh, it was awful. I mean, these are 20 people the week before Christmas that just lost their joy. How do you live with that? And some of them are doing the best they can, but a lot of them are just absolutely, they're devastated. It's been a very difficult and long day for these people, and it's not over yet. Investigation is going into tomorrow, they said, so it's certainly not over yet. Anytime a young person dies, it's the worst thing in the world, and to have a whole group of young children like this, so innocent, I have never had to deal with this before. I've dealt with many individual deaths, but never a situation quite like this, And you just pray that the Lord's going to give you the grace. In my head, I'm thinking about these services that we'll have to do next week, and what can you possibly say to anybody that's going to help them or make sense about this? We teach forgiveness, but it's going to be very difficult for people to forgive this person and to even understand why they would do something like this to children so innocent.
A lot of prayer services will be happening tonight and the coming days. And again, just remember, this is against the backdrop of the holidays coming up. People are supposed to be celebrating with their families, but instead, they're going to be mourning the loss of young children. Back to you.
Thank you very much, Giovanna. And that Monsignor we just heard, he's at St. Rose, Lima, and at that church there will be a vigil at 7 p.m. And we don't believe there'll be immediate availability for it, but that'll be, it's one of the primary places. He was describing the fire station was set up as a gathering place, if you will. As I understand it, Megan, that the elementary school and also other schools that was located near it was kind of up a hill a little bit. So the people there actually saw the kids running down the hill, and they gathered up the kids and they put them in the fire station to wait to try and reunite them with the parents.
Right.
And you saw those images of parent and child. And imagine, just for a second, I know we both throughout the day, like I'm sure countless of you at home did, just imagine that ride where you don't know if your kids didn't make it out of the school or if they're waiting for you at the firehouse and you don't know what you're going to find when you get there.
Right.
How harrowing and eternal that ride must have felt like for people. And then you get there and it's joyous to see your child, but you know there were other children that didn't get to have that, and those parents who didn't get to find their kid there. And that's the descriptions that we were hearing from that were unfolding this afternoon and today in Newtown. But that Monsignor was there, and he was trying as best he could in an impossible situation to help those families navigate it. And he saw, as he described, parents throwing themselves on floors and all the emotions that you'd expect in every corner of this country if that tragedy happened there.
It's almost like survivor's guilt.
Yeah.
That you have, that you're so excited to see your joy, as the Monsignor said, because that's what kids are. But then to realize our neighbor, the child that my child plays with, there's a guilt there that I'm sure a lot of parents are really feeling at this point. But no, I can't imagine. There were, the children lined up in the school, and as our images that we were showing you here, and Rich, you had mentioned the children coming out of the school, the children being picked up by their loved ones, by their parents. But the later the day went, you were seeing the parents leave that building without children. And that's heartbreaking. That is just, there are no words. It's just heartbreaking.
And I know a lot of people were asking the why today, and it's an obvious and it's a hugely legitimate question, but I think people, if they focus on the why, are going to be disappointed because there is no rationale for something like this, and there's no rationale for any kind of senseless violence. But when someone set out to take their parents' life, then turning the gun on the definition of innocence, little kindergarten kids in a classroom, and then systematically walking next door and doing the same, as well as taking a bunch of other adults, teachers, and administrators whose only job it was to try and educate and try and safeguard these kids. I think people searching for why will be disappointed. And there was one, we've had literally, I'm holding in my hand here, just sheet after sheet of mass shootings that we've seen, and almost all of them taking place on American shores. And they're from all corners of this country. And in every single case, it's senseless tragedy. There was one, though, that had a bit of a parallel to that. And for folks who follow tennis or Wimbledon at all, it might ring a bell because the guy who won the Wimbledon was Andy Murray, and he was a kid in that school in Scotland who, if you remember back in '96 in Dunblane, a guy walked in and killed 16 kindergarten children, and their teacher, and then, like in all these cases, then took his life. But he, the senselessness out of this, and they talked about the community, how it was such an open wound for so long, and how many of those children, the survivors of it, are scarred to this day. And you could obviously see why. You imagine so many of the victims that weren't just killed, but so many of the victims that will carry this for the rest of their lives. The families, the community, and then the kids in the class. That, how do you explain to a 5-year-old?
Well,
what
when is it
happened?
okay to go back to the school?
That's another
You
question.
know,
Apparently a week from today is when they go on winter break.
Right.
I don't know what happens next week. There's debates going on already, as you know, Megan, about armed guards around schools.
And the new security system had just been put in place at this school. So there was some kind of sense of security with this new principal that had come out. There was a buzzer. You had to go to the front desk. Somebody saw you. You had to sign in. But because this alleged shooter was connected to the school, they knew who he was.
You know, apparently there was a tweet that went out from an official at the school just to talk about the surrealness of it. Safety first at Sandy Hook. And this was from the principal a little over a month ago. And, but many questions and also many pointed calls for change, because I think we all agree we've seen too many of these kinds of shootings, although maybe not with such, you know, impossible victims to try and wrap our arms around. We're talking about kindergartners. I mean, every victim is tragic, but you know, these children. So there was a tweet that came from Mayor Bloomberg's office that a lot of people are talking about today, and given our coverage area, we wanted to share this with you. As many of you know, Mayor Bloomberg, as well as many mayors from around our region, a vocal proponent on curbing guns and gun violence, he said the following: "Not even kindergartners learning their ABCs are safe. We heard after Columbine that it was too soon to talk about gun laws. We heard it after Virginia Tech, after Tucson and Aurora and Oak Creek. And now we are hearing it again. For every day we wait, 34 more people are murdered with guns. Today, many of them were 5-year-olds. President Obama rightly sent his heartfelt condolences to the families in Newtown. But the country needs him to send a bill to Congress to fix this problem. Calling for meaningful action is not enough. We need immediate action. We have heard all the rhetoric before. What we have not seen is leadership, not from the White House and not from Congress. That must end today. This is a national tragedy and it demands a national response. My deepest sympathies are with the families of all those affected, and my determination to stop this madness is stronger than ever." And many people are echoing some of those sentiments. How it all translates, we will follow in the coming days here. But the nation will be watching Newtown. The vigils begin this evening. There will be funerals, there will be memorials, and it will capture this nation's attention as we are in the holiday season. But there will be discussions in Washington and in state houses across this country about what we have to do so we don't have another mass shooting at another Newtown. So we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, Megan and I will be right back, and we will continue our coverage here of the mass shooting and the massacre in Newtown.